Our VIP members are the best. Ron Neidham sent us like 6 pounds of this mesquite honey. There's a note on here too.
Yep.
Go ahead and read it.
So there is a local lady that he buys from each time he's in the area. And she said that this was one of the best batches her bees have made in many years. So thank you, Ron. You're super cool, and we really appreciate this because this gives us an opportunity to make something that we've never made before.
Yeah, exactly. I've never tried mesquite honey before. I have some ideas on what it might taste like and what we might do with it, but we're going to taste it in just a second and find out. But first, we got to get our yeast going, and for that, I'm just going to use a little bit of water. Can you just pour some water in here? Not a lot, just that much. That's good, perfect. And to that water, I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of Go Firm. It's kind of like, think of it like breakfast for your yeast. I mean, you know, they're in suspended animation. They're dormant. They're hungry. They need to wake up. It's coffee and breakfast all in one. It's a croissant and a coffee. How's that? Yeah, there you go.
Pain au chocolat?
Yeah, something like that. Okay. Then, yeast. We're going to be using 71B, also known as the Beast. And why are we using that? Because generally speaking, when we make a traditional mead, I like to have it be more or less an even playing field. And we usually use 71B when we make traditional. So that's why I wanted to use it for this one.
71B works really well in our particular environment.
Yes.
Because we're warmer and it just seems to work. Yep. If you are in a colder environment, then D47, I believe.
D47, yeah. Now, we say a warmer environment. We have air conditioning. Actually, our house is more or less climate controlled. It's more or less 73 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, that is. Fahrenheit. All the time.
Yep.
Summer, winter, doesn't matter. Day, night, doesn't really matter. A couple degrees cooler at night, but that's about it. We don't let it go below 70, and it almost never goes above 75 or 76. So that's our temperature range. I'm just going to use about half this packet. I'm eyeballing it. General rule of thumb is up to 3 gallon batch, use half a packet. Over 3 gallons, use a whole packet. And at 3 gallons, do whatever you want. It's all good. I have all that in my self-stirring cup, and I'm just going to let it self-stir. It's also just the cup from a NutriBullet blender, but it has ridges inside. I'm not going to make the joke.
There's a blob, but I think the blob
there's always a blob stuck to the side.
It's the go.
It's fine. It's good. Next up, honey.
Let's taste this, shall we?
We have not actually tried this one, so... See, we save all this stuff for on camera so that you guys get to be just as surprised as us by the reaction. Because I have no idea what this is going to taste like. Okay, we have one little problem.
It's thick.
It's not just thick, it's crystallized. So, we're going to taste it. It's more like creamed honey. Yeah, it looks really good.
It's going to be good, though.
Now taste it, but we're going to have to warm this jar. That's really nice. Not tasting it like it's, you know, you think mesquite, you think this smoky, weird thing. It's really not at all. It's just a really nice, sweet honey, good floral notes to it. I think it's really good.
I just have a little something different.
Right.
It's hard to express, though.
There's a couple options that we have here, too. We can try heating up this entire jar, or I can scoop out as much as we can and then just use water to get the rest. The difference is we won't know exactly how much we have, but it's going to be about 3 pounds because that's about how much fits in this.
So this volume is 3 pounds? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So what we have here is we started with about 96 ounces of water. Should be enough to fill that and our 3 pounds of honey. And I'm just going to do the old-fashioned way and scrape it in. It's really, really super thick. And I'm sure at a certain point, I'm going to be able to just fill the jar with water and get it out. But it's going to take a while. I know if I heated it, it might work a little bit better. But honestly, this is working. It's going to be messy, though.
Now, our water is warm.
Yep.
Which is going to help with us to mix it all in once he gets it out.
But it would have taken hours for this to heat up. And I don't want to microwave it or anything like that. So, you know, I'm doing it the hard way. Plus, it's probably more entertaining to watch me do this and make faces at getting sticky and all that. So I scooped out like half, and then we just started filling this with hot water while Derek is mixing the rest. And the hot water was what's in here. It's, when I say hot, it's probably like 100 degrees or so Fahrenheit, which I'm not sure what that is Celsius. I'll put it right here. And it seems to be working fairly well at dissolving it in the bottle. It's kind of a time-taking process, but this way I am heating up the honey without directly heating the honey, which probably would have taken a lot longer. But since we already have it at this point, we can do some of our readings and things now, like the pH. What?
We still got chunks of honey in here from when I
we do?
beat my
We
hand,
have to mix.
remember?
Oh yeah, needs to be mixed now. We did a dump mead where we didn't mix, and you just don't have a good starting gravity. In this case, I kind of want to know the starting gravity because I'm wondering now, did we maybe make a mistake here?
Yeah.
Could this be more concentrated than typical honey? And I don't know. I've heard that it's not when you have like creamed honey like that, but guess we're gonna find out, aren't we? First thing I want to do is get a pH reading. We've started doing this every single time now, and it's shocking how many times we end up having to make an adjustment that we wouldn't have in the past because we didn't know. I would say it's like 4.
Okay, then it's perfect.
Yeah, it's right at 4. So here's what happens. Water is like 7. Honey can be really acidic. So when you mix the right amount of honey with the right amount of water, it falls into range. That's why for years we never took pH readings.
Yeah.
And as long as you do roughly 3 pounds of honey in a gallon, you're going to be probably in that same range most of the time. Always good to check. What did it take? 30 seconds? Took longer for me to explain it than it took to actually do it.
Are you happy with the little bit of bubblage that the yeast has made?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and
I think what we're going to do
pitch
is
the yeast?
we're going to pitch the yeast.
Pitch it into
We
here?
just pitch it right into here and then dump everything in.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just going to give this a good
Because
swirl.
you can even put some of that back in there to get... Oh, it's swirled good enough. That's fine.
That's why I use the self-stirring cup. Because you can get it all out. All right. In it goes. And now I can take an actual specific gravity reading.
Stir, stir, stir.
Mixy mix. I know, I could just pour it from the pitcher. It's such a habit once you get used to using the baster. Now, if this is like most typical honey, it should be about 1.105 starting gravity. Let's find out, is it? How dissimilar are you to most honeys? It looks like 1.102, so it's right in the normal range. I mean, it's going to be somewhere around 13% alcohol when it's done, which is well within the range of 71B. 71B is 13 to 15, but we've seen it go even higher. It's like a workhorse for us. All right, now we got to get it back into the fermenter. Well, into the fermenter. It's never been in the fermenter. And I'm just going to pour it. No funnel.
It's crazy.
A cappella, which means nude. But I'm keeping my clothes on. Nobody needs to see that. Getting oxygen in at this point is not a bad idea. I'm probably just going to have to mix it. When we get about halfway, I'll mix it
I
up.
think we got oxygen just by shaking all the honey the whole time.
This is true. I'm going to do some.
There's a lot of shaking going on.
Whole lot of shaking going on. This does 2 things too. The foam that's in there, we learned this from another video that we did. The foam is staying in the pitcher. All right, where's the thumb saver bung?
Oh, you're going to shake it anyway?
I'm going to shake. I got it. It's right here. I'm just going to use a solid stopper and give this a good shake. I want to oxygenate this more, just cause. It's a good idea. You'll see a color change almost instantly. It's really hard to over-oxygenate at this point. Look at the color change. See
Look
that?
at all that foam.
It's not that much foam.
It's exactly that much foam.
It's not so bad. It's all right. The only reason why foam is an issue is because it takes up space. And it can get up into your airlock and make a mess. Other than that, the foam is not harmful in any way. It's not doing anything wrong. It's just part of the shtick of making a brew. Now the idea is I really want to use all of this because, it's got all the stuff in there and we don't want to waste any. We did not add fermento yet. Okay, so spoon was last used for something else, so I had to clean it, which means she put it into turbos. And just like all the other gear that we used here, everything we used was sanitized in
The red bucket of sanitization!
which is basically a bucket filled with sanitizer fluid made to the manufacturer's recommendations. It's just Star San mixed with water. That's all it is. But I have to dry this at the molecular level now, or everything's going to stick to it. That's not even sarcasm. I'm totally serious. If you've ever tried doing anything dry with a wet spoon, you know what happens. Okay, because we're going to add some fermento. We thought we might have added it earlier, but I don't think we did. And even if we did, adding another half teaspoon is not going to hurt anything. So here we go. Half teaspoon fermento right on top of the foam.
Beautiful. Fantastic. Perfect.
It'll get in there. I'm going to give it a little bit of a swirl, though.
Wiggle, wiggle. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Wiggle, wiggle.
Can you tell that this is the last video of the day? We're getting a little punchy. All right, I'm just going to leave it. It'll get in there. It's fermento. It'll do its thing. All that's left now is to put an airlock on it. And for that, we have an airlock with a stopper. And I'm just drying it with a paper towel that was dry. That way it sticks in there and doesn't pop out. Look at that. Perfect. So what are we going to do with this now?
I want to sit.
Probably 2, maybe 3 weeks. What we're looking for is there's going to be activity in here. Okay, this will probably foam up. You'll see the water level will go down here and up here, and you'll see air bubbles coming out. If you don't see that within a couple of days, check your airlock. Make sure it's in there firmly. If it's still in there firmly and you still don't see anything, look inside. If you see little teeny tiny bubbles coming up the side, it's working. Don't worry about it. If you don't see that, add more yeast at that point. Add a different kind of yeast, maybe a different batch or a different package, because that means your original yeast might not be so lively. In our case, though, we're going to wait for this to settle down when we don't see as much activity.
Because we did fill it to the 1 gallon mark, because we knew we had it in our pitcher and it was at the 1 gallon mark. We don't have very much headspace, which is great, but because of that foam and the production of more foam created by the fermentation process, it could erupt out the airlock, creating a big mess. So for the first couple of days, we're going to sit this in a tray, just a cooking sheet that has the edges, so that way if it does make that mess, the tray will catch that mess rather than my kitchen floor.
And we'll see you in a couple weeks. It's been 4 weeks. There's a couple things I want to talk to you about. So the first thing I want to show you is, see all that stuff on top, the like big, thick bubbles and stuff? People think all the time that that is mold or some kind of spoilage.
However, notice the lack of fuzz.
So let's get its first check.
We do notice that it's just bubbling along, and there are still little tiny bubbles coming up. But nonetheless, it's been a while, so let's give it a check.
Good amount of gassiness here, but I'm going to call that 1.008. So it's not completely done yet.
Let's put that back in here and perhaps give it a good swirl. What do you say?
Yes. And I'm just going to swirl it, which really just means making a vortex in the middle. That actually will break up those yeast rafts too. They may come back, they may not. I'm not worried about it.
It's also going to degas it, which may help the yeast continue its production because it'll get rid of some of that byproduct that it doesn't like.
Yep, there's a good amount of foam coming out. We're going to put the airlock back on, put the label back on, and let this sit for another week. We'll see you then. It's been 1 week. Time to take a reading. By the way, all that floaty stuff came back. So it's probably just yeast rafts or something. It's not mold of any kind. It's nothing harmful, so not worried. Okay, last time it was 1.008. This time it's 1.006. So guess what? It's close enough. We're going to rack it, and I'll explain why in just a moment. All right, so we got a wide mouth container here, and here's why. Because see where this level is? If I rack this and leave out all the lees and put it in here, well, if I put it in the same container, it might have gone a little too low. We could get more oxygen in there than we want. But I think I've jumped ahead a little bit. Let me explain why we're going to rack this. First, no, this is not done. And no, it's not actually dry. And I know what you're about to say, but you guys always say don't rack till it's done. Well, we also say never say always and never because we're not Sith and we don't deal in absolutes. So,
absolutely.
Let me explain why I'm okay with doing this. First, I don't know if you figured it out yet. When we watch our show, we show a lot of different ways to do things that may seem similar, but kind of just a little adjacent to each other. And that's intentional because there are a lot of ways to do it. So I don't like to say, this is the only way. You must always do this. No. We're showing a different method because here's one thing that I know that you might have realized by now. If this is at 1.006, we're probably going to want it a little sweeter than that. So if I stop the fermentation now or give it a chance of stopping now by racking it, I'm not hurting anything because we're probably going to end up sweetening it anyway. And if it ferments a little bit more, I don't care. It doesn't really bother me because it's going to be sitting under airlock for a while. So it's okay. All right. There's a strong misconception on that.
that said, if this was our final product and our intent of it being the final product, we would let this sit another week, take another gravity reading, and compare that from today's gravity reading. If it was still going down, we would let it sit another week, and so forth until we had identical gravity readings that were within the range of our alcohol tolerance for our yeast. If for some reason it was vastly different and it ended at a much higher gravity and we didn't know why, then we would still want to go ahead and pasteurize if we liked the flavor profile of it, because we weren't certain that something mishap caused it to stall.
That said, at 1.006, it's hard to really call it a stall, so to speak. I mean, it technically is, but if it stopped there, I wouldn't be super upset by it, let's just say. One thing we are noticing, and a couple people have told us, is that because we're using GoFirm, they're experiencing slower fermentations using GoFirm as well. Slower, but more steady and more resilient to stalling. That's a good thing. I have to say that's a very good thing, because I know that super fast fermentation, while it may seem like an appealing thing on the surface, actually is not, because you can be blowing out volatile aromas and flavors out of that aren't coming back. I mean, they're in there now, and then they blow out the airlock, they're not coming back. So a slower, less aggressive fermentation might be a little more desirable. That's not to say that if you have an aggressive fermentation, it's garbage and you have to dump it out. Please don't ever think that way. Don't dump things out just because of that. But there is something to be said for the slow and steady wins the race kind of deal. Kind of like bread. It's the same idea. If you make bread and you just rise it on the table or on your counter or whatever for half a day, it does one thing. If you take that same dough and you put it in your fridge and let it ferment for a couple of days, it adds a lot more flavor. So that's a way that maybe the differences in yeast can be more pronounced. I don't actually know, I didn't test that yet, but it makes sense. The more contact the yeast has with the brew and the more work it can do on that brew, the more pronounced the differences between the different yeasts might become. Food for thought.
If any of this needs further explanation, please let us know in the comments, and Brian will make sure to answer you as well as he can.
Absolutely. But for now, we're going to rack it. And to do that, we're using an auto siphon. I have the source up here. Derica has the destination lower than the source. And we have our siphoning tube and everything like that. And I just want to give it a couple of pumps to get it going, start the siphon, and then I can stop doing that. You don't have to keep going, but I only put it about halfway down to get it started. We hear a lot of people that, oh, I got air in it. Is my brew ruined? First, probably not ruined. Second, don't put it all the way down to start it. That's the real secret to using an auto siphon. And as you saw, no air, no nothing. It just pumped in pure liquid.
Now, as it starts to siphon, the water will go down. The level of your brew will go down. You want to keep an eye on that to make sure that your end of your siphon is below that level.
Yeah, I can see it. It's down here.
When we get to the very end, Brian will tilt it slightly and slowly and gently on its side.
Yeah, because the lees will start to...
We can get as much of the liquid and leave as much of the lees back.
And the reason for racking is to get it off of the lees, to get it to a more cleaner environment. There's nothing really wrong with leaving it on the lees for a little while longer, but this has sat for a while. We did still see some tiny bubbles coming up the sides. Am I getting there? I can see the end. We did see some tiny bubbles coming up the side, so this is technically not done yet, like I said. So it's kind of a little unusual situation to be racking yet. I hear a lot of people that rack when it's still way actively going. There's no reason to, okay? We could have left this another month if we wanted to, but I want to get to the next step, and you'll understand a little bit better once we actually get there. Okay, as we got to the end, it started sucking up a little bit of air, and that's when I pull it out and we're done. And I want to just shake this off. This is always awkward at the end here. I never know what I'm supposed to do. So I shake off a little bit of the excess. Derica's got that. Then I grab this from her. I got it. And I'll put this up on the table. And I just wanted to show you what happened here. See how close we got to the top? That's the least amount of airspace, headspace, whatever you want to call it, that I can foresee really putting in there. And in here, we have a little bit of waste. I mean, if you really, really wanted to, you could rack that off, pour that off into a glass and let it settle and drink off the top. If you really want to, you can. It's not much. It's a couple of mouthfuls. We just don't worry about it.
Don't be tempted to try to filter it using a coffee filter or something like that.
Well, that last little bit you can. Because you're going to drink it right away.
As long as you're not introducing it back into
don't put it back in here.
Because you don't want to aerate. And slow filtration is one of the easiest way to aerate a brew.
Yeah, through a coffee filter or something, it's going to drip, and that's going to just aerate everything. But we have something we'd like to do to this. This is a mesquite honey mead. So mesquite makes me think of wood, and wood makes me think of oak, and oak makes me think of chunks
Barrel
of
char.
wood that we can put in here from barrel char wood. Yeah, I was getting there. It's all right.
He's taking the long train to
Yeah.
China.
All right. We're going to go find some wood chunks and be right back. When it comes to oaking, there's only one product that we have really found that we like to use, and that is barrel char wood products. Ken over there knows I love the French oak. I think we single-handedly brought it back because he said it was a low seller.
I have no idea why.
It's my favorite
like
one that
the
he makes. The smell on this is just incredible. Ugh. It's just...
It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. But anyway, what this does is it adds some tannins to it, but it also adds that smoky, oaky, just rounds out the flavors of a mead like this. So with a mesquite kind of backbone and a French oak kind of forefront, this is going to be kind of awesome. But the way you do it is this. I had here some boiling water and I dropped the wood in there. You want to leave it in there for a few minutes. Essentially what we're doing is trying to sanitize it a little bit. So it was boiling water, it's really, really hot. And also there's some excess tannin. You can probably see the color of the water. So we're going to leach out some of the like surface stuff that we really don't want. Somebody asked, why would we do this to get rid of the tannin if we're adding tannin using the oak? It's a good question, because if there's too much, like if you get the surface extraction going, you could actually over tannify, is that a word, your brew. So we don't want to do that. So just get a little bit of it off of there, soak it. Mostly it's for keeping it clean, because we actually had one time we didn't do it this way. We threw it in, we put the wood in during primary fermentation, and it ended up not working out. Let's just say I think it got infected, and it
I think it was
bad.
a pre-used
Yep.
chip.
It was a pre-used piece of wood that we didn't re-sanitize.
Right.
And yeah.
Ideally, if you want to reuse your chips, once you have completed using it, you probably want to put it like in an oven or a dehydrator and make sure it's thoroughly dry.
Yep.
Which we also didn't do. So I think it was our fault.
Okay, this is hot. I'm going to do it quickly, but basically just grab it, put it right in. That's it. It was warm. I'll say it. It was warm. And the next question comes up of how long do you leave the wood in here? And that is largely to your own discretion. You can leave it a week. You can leave it 2 weeks. The smaller the piece of wood and the more you have, the less time you need, because it'll over extract really, really quickly. A chunk this size is usually anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, but you can leave it months. It just will start to taste like a broomstick after a while. So you want to be careful with that.
The higher the temperature your brew is stored,
yeah.
the more quickly it'll extract. And the higher the alcohol percentage you have in your brew, the more quicker it'll extract as well.
Speaking of alcohol content, I don't think we ever figured it out on this one, did we? Let me rectify that situation right now. Using the calculator teacher said I would never have handy. That, as you can see, even while putting a label on, was handy enough that it was right there in my pocket. Haven't done that joke in a while. Figured it was about time to bring it back. Okay, so this started at 1.102, and it ended, well, it's at 1.006. So what I do is I take 1.102 minus 1.006, and we get 0.096. Multiply that by the magic number, 131.25. If you don't know why we're using 131.25 again, it's because honestly, true accuracy just doesn't exist when it comes to this kind of thing, and everybody else uses it too. So we're just going with the flow. That gives us 12.6% ABV. So I'm going to call it like 12%, 12.5. Well, let's say 12.5, just cause. So 12.5. Now that may change because, as we said earlier, it's my pen with the flag, and yes, it says "fun with flags" on the flag. If you don't get that joke, I don't know how we can be friends. The reason it might change is because, like we said earlier, it might still be working a little bit, so we might get like another half point or something out of it.
Also,
No
we
big
have
deal.
further plans than just oaking this for later down the road, and that as well could change, well, will change the ABV.
Absolutely. So we'll see in a couple weeks once this is oaky. All right, so it's been 2 weeks on the oak, and let's see if it's good to go. It smells really nice. It's not quite clear, though. That's unusual. I want to see what you think.
Unfortunately, part of the difficulty of making multiple brews all at once is that even if it was just a week ago, it's hard to remember exactly what was going on.
This is just mesquite mead.
Yeah.
Mesquite honey mead.
Mesquite honey now that's been oaked. So, I'm going to get a taste.
Give it a taste. Get a little bit of oak,
Yeah.
but not much.
I think maybe a little bit more time.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
But so far, so good.
Yeah, a tiny bit of the oak is coming through. Now, what you're looking for if you oak something like this, is you're looking for almost a vanilla-like flavor, a little bit of a caramel flavor, some more mouthfeel, a little bit more of a tannic presence.
Yeah.
And even some smoke sometimes, depending on
The
the
char
wood that
level.
you use and
Yeah.
the char level. So far, I think this is going well. I think I want to let it go longer.
Yeah. And if we were in the midst of summertime, even though we are temperature controlled, the room that these are in is lesser so
Yeah.
it may have extracted a little bit quicker if we were there. But
Right.
we're there in the wintertime, so it's taking its time, and that's okay.
All right, we'll see you in another week. It's been 3 weeks on the wood. See how it did. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to rack this because it's done. I can actually smell the oak now. Smell that.
You can smell what the rock's cooking.
I can smell it.
Oh, yeah, for
I can
sure.
smell smoke. So, whoops,
Wasn't me.
not this time. All right, the reason we're going to rack it is there's some lees in the bottom here, and I just want to get it off of all that stuff so that we have a clean brew to work with. So, in order to make adjustments, we got to know where we're at, which means we got to take a taste.
Oh, noes.
Smells like young mead.
Not too shabby.
I'm pretty good with that.
Yeah.
I could drink that. The oak comes through. The there's a residual sweetness here that I can't explain.
Yeah, it tastes like it's made from honey.
Should we take a reading on this because this doesn't seem quite right? It wasn't fully finished last time we checked. I wonder if it went down at all. Let's take another gravity reading.
Right.
So it went down to 1.004. Not a lot of change. I'm not even gonna consider that.
Sure, and in 3 weeks' time, I would go out on a limb and say it's done.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, this is going to sit for a few months before
Under airlock
we,
still.
Yeah, under airlock before we do anything with it. Oh, you know what? We need to put a score on this because I think it's ready. Let me grab a couple glasses. See, normally we would have all kinds of adjustments to make, but I have some words. Okay. This really, it's surprising. I wasn't expecting this. We even got out the other jar of mesquite honey ready to sweeten this, thinking, oh, we want it sweeter. But wow, the only thing I do want it to do is settle out a bit more.
Yeah.
So this is this is the tasting, but it'll settle out some more over time.
Yeah, I don't think the flavor is going to change.
Well, it'll mellow just like anything else, but it's not going to change in a week.
Right. So, visual appearance, it is still cloudy.
Yeah.
We've noticed this happens frequently when you oak something because the wood is physically releasing some of its essence.
I'm sure there's some chemical reactions going on with stuff that's in the wood and in the brew. And I'm not worried about it. We've seen that before.
But it's that pretty straw color, so I'm not really offended by the cloudiness.
And the smell, wow. I get a little bit of the barrel char. It's just a unique smell, but still very familiar to mead.
Sure, and I'm trying to recall, which is difficult for me because we've made so many brews, how many meads we've oaked.
8 to 10, maybe more.
Okay. Because this pairing of the mesquite honey and the French oak seems to be really nice.
Like spot on. Yeah.
All right.
I'm going for a taste. It's not super tannic, but it has a good mouthfeel.
The ending is more where I'm getting the tannins than up front. Up front, I'm getting the sensation of creamed honey.
Yeah,
Not-
a little bit.
Not overly sweet and not overly tactile, but there is a nice...
It has viscosity.
It has some viscosity. It does. And it's definitely reading honey. You don't really have to think about it too much to know what it is. And I personally appreciate that in meads. I want to know that it's honey. And normally I need that sweetness or some other note to trick my mind to let me know that it's honey. In this case, the sweetness is more subtle, I would say.
Yeah.
But I'm still definitely reading it as honey.
I am starting to get that bitter note in the back of my throat from this on the exhale mostly, but I'm not offended by it this time. It just kind of lets me know that it's fermented honey sometimes. But the sweetness is definitely on the upfront, and there's like a flowery sweetness to it. Then it goes into that oak note that's actually really, really nice. And there's even a decent acidity here that really just rounds it out. Like, it's just got everything working for it. And I might sound really surprised just because I was not expecting this to taste as sweet as it tastes.
And that's why when we took our initial tasting, we're both kind of like, what? Like, it doesn't need adjustment? Why does it not need adjustment? We're so used to
it just worked.
Having to continue the process. This worked out so well.
We may have to start oaking more things. If that rounds things out like it seems to have here, that might be a really great way to not have to oversweeten things. Like, but that doesn't make sense because oaking does not add sweetness.
It doesn't.
If anything, it can balance
but I think,
something that's too sweet.
I think the addition of the vanillins or whatever it's called in oak
that gave it the creaminess.
Worked
That's what
really well with the honey. So I think oaking mead in particular might be a really good route to go.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And that's why I was trying to think, how many other meads have we oaked in the past? Because for as such a simple process as this was, I'm getting a lot of complexity and depth of flavor that I was not anticipating.
Yeah. It made this into something special, something unique that, is just really, really good.
And I think that just goes to show that in certain recipes, simplicity is the key. If you have two things that are playing together so nicely, as in this case, the mesquite honey and the French oak, don't add complexity to it just to add complexity. Let them shine. Let them have their little conversation in your glass and enjoy that for what it is.
This is also at about 7 weeks right now, which is, by many estimation, very, very young. A lot of people seem to think that you need months or years before a mead is good. I disagree. It can be good, even young, if you do it correctly. If you try to overshoot things or you try to make too much alcohol, you could be making something that needs a long time to age out to be good. But, done correctly with a little bit of control and a little bit of planning, you can make something really, really good.
That said, I anticipate this being aged for a year is going to
be way better.
Mellow things out and blend things together. Some
of the sharper acids and that bitter note that I'm getting might actually mellow out. That's why I don't want to make any changes. Because sometimes, and that comes with a little bit of experience too. If we alter those changes now, it might go too far in the aging. So I'd rather leave those kind of youngish. Like I said, it smells young. I smelled that right off, and I got the flavor of it too. So I want to let those things meld together over time.
All right, so Brian's going to put up our scorecard so that way you know what we're rating this on, and we're going to be thinking about what our numbers should be.
We need like the Jeopardy music theme song or something right here. All right, are you ready?
I think so.
1, 2, 3, 7.5. Wow, we're all over the place today.
I was a full spectrum of numbers. I'll let you go first, since you're the low man on the totem pole.
I already know what somebody's going to say. If you gave it a 7.5, why didn't you do something to make it better? I think I just explained that, but that is the basic gist. I think time is going to make this better, and I don't think anything we would do today would improve it in such a way that it would take away the things that are negative for me right now. We could make it sweeter, but then that's just going to mask some of those flavors. It's not going to actually fix them. We could add more tannin, maybe, but I think it's got enough tannin.
I got plenty of mouthfeel going on.
I don't want to add more acid. I want to take away some acid, but I'm afraid if I take away some acid now, preservative value might not be as good. And somebody will say, oh, why don't you take a pH reading? And you know what? You're right. Let's take a pH reading right now.
Now we know that the fermentation process is an acidifying process. What I don't know, because I've never bothered to research it, is if oaking changes the pH.
I don't see where it would, but it's possible. But the other reason why we're not making any changes is because this is really good as it is. Like, it's quite drinkable now. I can only imagine it's going to get better. Now, my score of...
No, you're
sorry.
That's right.
We're down to about 3, maybe even a little below. It's between 2.5 and 3, I would say,
Okay.
which is perfectly preservable. How's that for
Perfectly preservable.
perfectly preservable?
Is that a t-shirt?
Yes, I like that. So that's why I don't want to make any changes, because what would you change? Like, the only thing that I would want to do, and it would make this a completely different thing, is there's some kind of fruit I might want to add to this. Like something
Like apricot?
apricot or pear or even apple, I think would really work well in this particular brew, but that's changing all of what it is.
So we've made a cicer.
Mm-hmm.
What is a pear mead?
A Picer? A Perrier? Perrier!
Perrier.
I don't know. I don't think it has a name. It's a melomel.
Yeah, I'm just we
mead?
got all that mesquite right there.
Okay.
Let us know in the comments if you think.
No, pear, apricot, mesquite with oak.
Sure. Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
And we'll take that into consideration.
So why were you a 9?
I
not
was
a
a
10?
9. I started at a 7.5 and then
See? Great
I
minds.
jumped around and then I went to a 9 because first of all, the thing that tends to bother Brian more than me is that bitter note in the end. I've just accepted that as part of fermented honey. And I don't think bitter notes bother me as much
No,
as they bother
you don't
Brian.
mind bitter. I don't like bitter.
Right.
I'm not a huge fan of lemon and grapefruit and things like that. So,
Like them all.
yep.
So right away, that's going to change our scoring patterns. And then on top of that, there's so many elements of this that I am genuinely surprised and pleased by. I was anticipating all the things needing to happen to this, and I'm fine with it as it is.
Because we weren't prepared for this, what we're going to do now is just rack this back to a fermenter, put it under airlock, and let it sit in the ferment station for a few months until we get around to putting it into bottles. And you'll see it again in a year when we do the 1-year tasting. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.